Well, it is 4:45 here in the Netherlands, so I think we have a lot of participants on board. So, well, first of all, good afternoon, but also a very good morning and a good evening to those tuning in from across the globe. My name is Farah Qureshi, and you might know me from my work at Water Alliance or from the previous know-how sessions. For those who haven't met me yet, I have a background in digital marketing, so pretty much everything social media related, content related, and everything that is happening around communications and online is within my portfolio. One of the biggest changes we've been seeing in the sector is that a lot of water tech companies are really stepping up their social media game. But the question that I've been getting a lot is that how do you stand out in an overloaded media environment? So, and I think that's a pretty fair question to ask because I think the average attention span of a human being is only about 7 seconds, and the competition on Twitter, LinkedIn, and my precious Instagram is enormous. So, how do you create engagement that actually stands out? Well, and to answer that question, we've invited two amazing speakers who are very keen to share their tips, tricks, words of wisdom, and everything there is beyond. But before I give them an old school introduction, I think it will only be fair to introduce them by one of their latest social media posts. So, everyone, meet Sarah Walker-Smith, the social CEO we know from Shakespeare Martineau, and John Gonzalez, marketing manager at the Northeast Ohio Regional Sewer District. I am quickly picking up from here because apparently the sound isn't working. So, Sarah,
Hi there, hi.
hi there.
Hi.
Another introduction than I have planned, but I'm really happy that you're here. And since the shed video isn't working the way we wanted it to work, could you tell us a little bit more about your shed life and what you've been doing and creating online?
Yeah, sure. So the picture you're seeing there is a shed life from a few months ago. As you can probably tell, because my hair's a bit longer now. I've still not managed to get to a hairdresser since lockdown started. So I started shed life both internally but then externally within a few days of lockdown starting, because I suddenly found I'd got no ability to talk to people anymore. And my job as a chief executive with around about 900 people in the business is to keep them engaged and keep talking to them. And obviously I like to talk to an external world as well. And then I started to ask myself, well, why am I having two different audiences? And then realized that an awful lot of what I was creating internally we could use externally as well. So the video that you've tried to show there, and thanks for showing that, is just one example of where I made a vlog, I guess, essentially, that we used both internally and externally. But what's been really interesting is, well, I can go into this in however much detail you want me to at the appropriate point, but what's been really interesting is I didn't intend to start doing this. It's just grown. And indeed, if I showed you what the first ones looked like way back in March, I was literally sitting in this shed where I am now, which looked like a sauna. It was just bare pine walls. There was no furniture in it, no pictures, and the whole thing's just evolved. So now I have a vlog. I use it internally, I use it externally. I interview people, sometimes very serious things, sometimes fun things. I sing from the shed. I've even broadcast some of the singing, which is crazy, but the whole thing's kind of grown, really. So it was one of the silver linings to come out of a terrible situation, and it was born out of necessity to try and continue the dialogue that I have with people both internally and externally.
So from what I understand, is that you've just started this. So how did your colleagues react to this type of engagement that you're creating? Is it something they were aware of, or something that they were really enthusiastic about?
Yeah, amazingly so. And I've had to deliver some very difficult messages this way. You can imagine, as a chief executive in the middle of the COVID crisis. So sometimes I've been talking about very difficult subjects, about what we're going to have to do to survive and what we're going to have to, the changes we're going to have to make. Other times I'm talking about rhubarb or singing songs, and it's fascinating, actually. It seems to be attracting different people, both internally and externally, depending on the style, the subject matter. And I guess that's the first big tip from me is you've got to think about the audience. You've got to think about what you're trying to achieve and the engagement that you want and why you're doing it. And you'll need to adopt a different style depending on who it is. So we find that we can adopt the shed, if you like, and what I'm doing from the shed for both serious messages. I've done talks with economics professors about the state of the economy, and I've also sung on my own from Les Mis and broadcast it to the business. So that's the full range of what's happened, and the positive feedback has been astonishing, actually, and it's really built my confidence. I think at first I was thinking, what on earth am I doing? I must be absolutely crazy, and you know, as a chief exec supposed to behave like this? And then I thought, well, actually, no, I'm just being myself. And actually, I do believe in authentic leadership. So I kind of gained confidence and courage just to carry on being myself and do what felt right for both internal and external audiences. And I think if you do that, you will get positive feedback. And the feedback's been fantastic.
Well, that is great. Thank you so much, Sarah. And I think this is also where I would like to bring in our second guest for today, John Gonzalez. John, can you hear us? Oh, John, you are still on mute.
Apologies. Yes, no. I can hear you fine. I hope you can hear me now.
No worries. Well, John, could you give us a quick introduction of yourself? Because I had an amazing TikTok video I wanted to show of you, but unfortunately there is no sound.
Sure.
So we're just going to do that the old-fashioned way.
That's fine with me. I am the communications manager for the Northeast Ohio Regional Sewer District. I've worked in our communication department in a variety of ways for about 20 years now. And so I've seen a lot of different ways in which communication has changed. And social media has really been a great opportunity for us as a utility to reach our customers and to reach the residents of the Northeast Ohio area in a creative way and help them to see the work that is going on all around them that they typically may only be very vaguely familiar with when they pay their bill, if that. And so our effort has been to try to find creative ways to connect with our customers and connect with the residents. And as I mentioned, social media, specifically Twitter, but all of our social media efforts are really aimed at making that connection with customers in a creative way.
Yeah, and I think your engagement is really outstanding because you have a unique way of combining information and humor. And I think from time to time, I could state that your posts are a little bit daring as well. So was it 20 years ago that you started this approach, or is it something that grew naturally? What happened?
Well, we've been on the social media platform since about 2008 or 9. And we have really taken opportunities to explore and experiment on the platforms based very much on what Sarah was saying about knowing the audience, knowing how the platforms are used, kind of understanding what the expectations are for users on those platforms, how quickly they expect people to respond, what types of engagement they're looking for. And so over the course of that 10-year time frame, things have changed tremendously, but some very basic elements have remained true. I want to thank our leadership because they've really allowed us to explore and experiment and try things in a way that we have found to be successful. And so it wasn't an overnight decision, and it certainly hasn't been the same way over that 10-year time frame. What we have learned is that certain techniques work, and the more real our engagements are, they do seem to have a ripple effect and be able to reach and end up being shared more readily because people can relate to them, they can connect to them. It's something they would laugh at themselves, or something they would share or have shared with them. And that likability factor is really something that goes to the relationships that we're trying to build with people on the platforms that we're present.
So I think it's really interesting that you bring up the sharing part because what I see, and that's also with your account, Sarah, is that a lot of big companies and influencers share the post you post, or share and retweet everything that you post. So is it something that is prearranged, or is it something that they just like and pick up? How would you explain that?
For me, it's not prearranged. I mean, so there are two things going on here. There's my law firm that I'm the chief executive of is a firm called Shakespeare Martineau, and we have obviously a big marketing department there. They're doing the kind of great stuff that John's talking about. You know, they're analysing, they're doing it properly. They've got campaigns running. They're doing all of that. What I'm doing has got nothing to do with that. We've deliberately kept it separately. So mine is now very much me engaging with the communities that I need to be engaged with, whether it's fellow chief execs, clients, potential clients, people that currently work for us, people that used to work for us, people that might work for us in the future. So I'm building that brand. And I think we decided, and it wasn't a big strategic decision, but I find myself as the only woman in England, in the UK, doing my job, which is a bit crazy, i.e. the chief executive of a large national law firm. So we kind of decided that we need to use me as a flag bearer, a kind of spokesperson for the firm, because it does demonstrate that we're willing to be a bit different and think a bit differently. So there was definitely a bit of science behind that. If you think it's not just that I've decided I want to spend all of my life on, you know, Twitter or LinkedIn. There's definitely a link to the strategy there to kind of show the world that hopefully we're a little bit different. But essentially what I'm doing is me, and it is authentic. And that's not me, but that's a gorgeous picture. So no idea who that is, but it's essentially, yeah, what I'm doing, it has to be authentic. If it's pre-planned, if it's preordained, if I'm pre-organizing to get retweets or connections with other big companies and that kind of thing, it would make it inauthentic. That would turn it into sales and marketing, and we're not trying to do that. We're just trying to show the world who we are. And I've looked at some of your stuff, John. You know, I'm not used to getting involved in looking at tweets from Ohio or indeed from sewer works, but I found it really engaging. So I'm not in your sector or your neck of the woods at all, but I found it really engaging because it was human and it was coming across as authentic. And I think that's hugely important.
I think that you raise a good point. I thank you for that. We do have followers from across the world, and we get comments quite a bit saying, I'm not even from Ohio and I'm following this account and I don't know why. And
yeah,
the fact that those engagements come across to me reflects the fact that we do share relatable content. We have a voice that is how people talk on our platforms. And I think that goes a long way. If you look at the content that we try to tweet about, it doesn't necessarily have to be specific to the Northeast Ohio Regional Sewer District. It's speaking to bigger issues that touch people all around the country. Because we're a utility, we serve people 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and our service is affecting them whether they know it or not. The reality is that for that reason, we can connect to almost any trending topic, connect to any local event, any national event, and find a relationship between the work that we do, the benefit we provide, and the way in which people are just simply living their lives every day. So if we can make that connection in an entertaining or an educational or even an emotional way, it's one of those things where it makes people stop for a moment and think, I had never thought of it that way before. And that's really what we're just trying to hook some people to make them realize that we're there to help. We are there to serve our customers, but beyond that, we can educate to an audience much bigger than that. And the impact can grow from that one engagement.
Well, it's beautiful you say that, John. So I've been getting a text from my colleague, Tom Freyberg, that he had some burning questions for you as well. So Tom, if you are here, then please turn on your microphone and camera so you can ask those burning questions to our guests for today.
Thank you, Farah. Thank you. Great conversation so far, Sarah and John. Massive fan of your work so far. I've got so many questions to ask you guys. I don't know where to start. I'm not going to ask you to sing, Sarah, by the way, in case you wanted to.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Yeah, maybe start with you, Sarah, because I think, like you said, you're the CEO of a business. You've got to run the business. This is separate from your marketing efforts. Yeah. And creating the content is one thing, but often engaging afterwards is another part of being successful. Right. So how do you find the time? I mean, people ask me that as well, but you've got to take care of every single one of those employees, like you say, deliver some news during the lockdown. So do you then kind of post the content and dovetail with the marketing team, or do you still just, you're up until 1 a.m.
I
responding to?
I do. And I've yeah, I may need some tips from everybody else here on this one, actually. I am responding to it. Certainly the internal stuff, absolutely, it's me. And I say thank you to everybody. When I put the Les Mis video out, so it was me singing Les Mis, and what had happened was one of the partners in the office, it turns out he's a concert pianist, and he sent me a video of him playing on my own, and I said, oh, that's just brilliant. And he said, I want you to sing to it. It's like, okay. Now I do sing, by the way, it's not quite as random as it sounds. So I thought, oh, okay, right, I've never sung in front of my business. I've only been in this business for 18 months. So on that one, I sang the song, and then I said to everybody, I'm being ridiculously brave. I can't believe I'm doing this. Here you go. I'm not going to talk about the business today. You might all need cheering up. Here you go. Here's a song. So, and within half an hour of that going out, I'd had 220 emails about it. So I then sat there and thought, oh God, I'm going to have to reply to all of these. And I did. It took me a while, but I did them in batches, and I just did some very quick replies. And I found a way of, I wanted to personalize the replies, but equally I had to find an efficient way. So I did myself some standard text, and then I kind of personalized something, top and tailed it, and did that. On LinkedIn, I get an awful lot of people commenting on posts that I've done. I do go back, I allocate myself some time, I go back and like things, I comment, I try and engage that way. Where it gets difficult is where I get an awful lot of people sending me messages. Occasionally, I don't get back to them. I had one lady recently come back with a really rude message to me and said, I sent you a message 2 weeks ago. She probably doesn't realize I get hundreds a day. And I really respected you, but you've never replied to me. And I just went straight back and said, I am so sorry. I'm unreservedly sorry about that, and apologized. She didn't come back, but that's her deal. That's not my deal. So if you set yourself up for this, you need to find a way of blocking time to deal with it. But you do have to deal with it, because when you get yourself out there like that, if you don't respond, if you don't deal with it, it's not, again, it's not being authentic, but you'll need to find efficient ways of doing it. But you see, remember, I'm not doing follow through to try and sell. I'm not trying to sell anything here. I'm just trying to create a dialogue and connect.
Well,
John said
it's a conversation stuff, isn't it? Yeah.
Connection. John used the word connection several times. And if I may just, I know I'm waffling, but I'll stop in a second. There's one other thing that John said that really resonated with me. We know increasingly from things like the Edelman Trust Barometer that society is looking to business, whatever sector we're in and whatever business we're in, is looking to business leaders to fill the gaps that they perceive are being left by politicians or by local government or whatever else it might be. And I do think they want to engage with us, John. I think you're absolutely right to talk about things that go way beyond the realms of the businesses that we deal with. So I think as a business leader, it's becoming a key part of the job now.
Very good, very good. Are you just, another question, are you finding now you're kind of a trend setting in terms of running a legal company, being lost? Have you found since you've done it that other, not imitation versions, but you're finding other competitive companies or other leaders of legal firms trying to get into podcasting and things like that, or is it you're kind of still leading the field in that way?
So I hadn't really paid any attention to this, but my head of external comms said to me earlier this week, you do know you're the only chief exec of a top 50 law firm that's doing this, don't you? I said, no, I had no idea, but that's not why I'm doing it. I think the problem is, how can I put it? I probably am a little bit different to most of my colleagues that run law firms. And I think they've got to find their own way of doing things, and for them to try and imitate my way of doing things probably wouldn't be right. So I also don't think a lot of them think it's their job to do this. I think they maybe see their jobs slightly differently, but I think we're a people business, whether it's our clients or our people. Our product are our people. We sell people. I mean, we don't sell people because that would be wrong, but you know, we're selling personalities, we're selling advice, we're selling relationships, we're selling time, we're selling support. So we have to have a human face, but I'm not sure every law firm has quite got the memo on that one yet.
Cool. Well, great work so far. I'm really enjoying the content as well. But John, I have to say, I think your utility is one of the leading water utilities in terms of engaging content on Twitter, particularly. You recently shared a video where there's a saxophone player playing into a big pipe and said, look, we've got thousands of kilometers of pipe. One of my favorites, great stuff. But arguably, I think what you've created is, you know, there's a tone of voice and there's a sense of humor that comes with it. So the question, I think, for me and other people as well, is if your team or yourself moved on to another role, how can you ensure that level of engagement, entertainment banter can kind of carry on if the team behind it move on, or if the person moves on? Are you kind of training up other people? Have you put a plan in place for the rest of the communication team so it can kind of continue the legacy you're leaving almost?
Well, we certainly do have some communication guidelines that we use to indicate how do we plan to use these platforms. You're exactly right that there's a lot of my personality in the way that I tweet, and so there's certain things that perhaps might not transition as effectively depending on who's holding the role. However, we do have a communication team here, and I have a solid backup who's able to tweet in my absence on certain topics and certain occasions. And so it is important to have a good team around you who can support you and be able to share some of the ideas. And the way in which our organization and our department specifically has supported me to take this tone of voice on our Twitter account specifically shows that our team knows what is expected on that platform and knows what is expected of the engagements that we look for. So I think anytime there's a social media transition, if that time were to come here, when that time comes, there would be some bit of gap there in terms of making between connecting point A and point B. But I do think that the organization recognizes, and any utility should recognize, that you have to try to find the talents that are present on your team and capitalize on them. Because we have faces across our organization, and we have 800 employees, and each of them bring a separate story, a different experience, and play a different role in the work that we do. And what I like to do is to make the connections with those people and help to tell their story in a way that shows that we have the human face. We are people that are doing the work that is helping to keep our lake great and keep our resources protected. So in terms of preparing for a new generation of people to take on this work, platforms change all the time as well. And so it's important to recognize that we have to be exploring and finding ways to connect on whatever platform is current and find a way to be relevant there. And it's good to have people around me who support me, but are also relevant to know that they can come in if they need to and help to carry some of that voice forward without losing their own voice. So it's a way of bringing some of their personality to that platform in a way that helps to connect with our audience. Great to hear.
Part of the intro video I think we were going to show for you showed a TikTok video that you guys have produced. Very entertaining. Maybe if people haven't seen it, we can resend it to everyone. But what you talked about making sure you're kind of in tune with the new developments, and a lot of people are talking about TikTok. It's a little bit controversial, but for people listening and for other utilities who attempted to maybe dabble, what's been your experience so far? Obviously, Twitter is kind of your main platform, I think, in terms of engagement, tone of voice. How are you trying to translate that to 30-second videos that's arguably a slightly different demographic?
It is a different demographic, but the intent is the same. And you can learn by watching TikTok and understanding the generation that's using it is where people are stopping, why they spend so much time there. It's because the content is quick, it's quick moving, it's created by people who have a creative side, and they're using this as a way to channel that into a way that they can share their ideas and messages with people who are interested in them. So it's good to know how the platform is being used. Sarah made a great point that this all takes time. You can't just jump into a platform and expect to start kicking out content if you don't have a plan in place, if you don't have the resources available to support you and to be able to dedicate the time to it. And so it's important to set some expectations for yourself and the people who know that you are doing this work, so that you're not overcommitting yourself, you're not stretching yourself too thin, and you're not leaving large gaps between what you're pushing out and the responses that you're getting. If you're generating content and people are expecting you to do that regularly on a given platform, but you just can't commit to it, you're losing potential followers there or potential audience share in that regard. So it's important to go in. My recommendation when I speak to other utilities is to know what your resources are, know what you're willing to commit, and then find the platform or two where you can begin to make the most of that. And as the opportunity arises, look for those chances to step in and try something. You don't have to commit to it, but to try it and see what response you get. Our TikTok content has not been as current as our Twitter content is, but TikTok is a way that we can create content in a way that matches that style. and it's still very shareable on Twitter in a way that's relatable to the audience. And so we know that people like that type of content, and so why not move that over to Twitter, where it's also finding a good foothold with the people who are in that audience as well.
So basically, cross posting between the two.
It doesn't always work, but I think TikTok does provide a lot of those opportunities, and we have started putting content there with that in mind, knowing that we do plan to post in both locations. But certainly, there's content that only works on one platform a bit better than it may work on others.
Okay, final question, I promise, and then I'll throw back to you, Farah and Sarah. Sorry. John, I mean, you mentioned about your top executives kind of giving you the backing and support. Obviously, you've got to run the strategy, and they're very happy with what you're doing. But have you ever done anything that's kind of got you into, I hate to use a pun, like hot water, in terms of, because you tend to push the envelope as a utility that, you know, not to make a blanket kind of stereotype, sometimes the social media can err on the side of caution, whereas you guys tend to be a bit more outrageous. Have you ever done anything where you've had to delete or apologize, or you've kind of raised the eyebrows of the top brass in a hire there?
No, thank goodness we haven't had that really significant issue. There was one opportunity where I was trying to play a bit of a joke with one of our utilities who was on the West Coast of the United States here out in California, and it was misconstrued, and so therefore at that point I did apologize and say that was not my intent, and it was cleared up very easily. But in terms of a significant issue over the 10 years we've been doing this, we've been very fortunate to not have those. We always have customers who will come back at us and say, you really have somebody being paid to make bad jokes on Twitter, like this is your job. And I like those opportunities because we acknowledge, that we have people doing creative things to help customers know what our work is. And the mere fact that you stopped to comment on it meant that you saw it and you recognize that it generated some response from you. And it's good to hear other people then chime in and say, yes, I'm glad this person is here because I wouldn't have made this connection otherwise. But those types of unexpected engagements, some of them may start negative, but the reality is that if you have that dialogue with somebody, the chances are you're gonna gain some other followers in the process.
I think the main thing is you address the problem and then engage very quickly to kind of rectify with clear communication.
Yeah, timing is critical. Yeah.
Farah, I'm sorry, over to you now. I just too many questions. No, I know. Back to you.
Well, I think it's really interesting what John says, and Sarah, I see you nodding. Is that something you agree on, or do you have any other thoughts on that?
Well, I was agreeing with virtually everything that John was saying. Which bit, the last bit, I think if you do get it wrong, you absolutely just come clean straight away. I mean, again, it's back, you're trying to build trust, you're trying to build a dialogue, you're trying to be authentic. So it's very, very difficult to then suddenly change tack once you've built that personality, or that your words and actions have to meet. And I mean, this is the single biggest thing. Another reason, and we've got to recognize here, I think John and I are approaching this slightly differently, because I'm approaching it as an individual that's trying to pave the way in a sector, both for my business, but also for I'm trying to change the sector, I'm trying to change business, I'm trying to do various other things. You know, John quite rightly is leading an organization's marketing. So I'm not speaking for my organization with this at the moment, because we have people leading our marketing. But as an individual, again, it's my personal brand out there as well. Now, it maybe is with John because his personality is so well associated with Ohio, but certainly for me, you've got to be true to yourself as well. And my normal style is to put things right and apologize to people. So that's what you do. But I think, as Tom said, that's exactly how any business should deal with it anyway. Quickly, openly, transparently, and apologize when you've got it wrong. How can you possibly go wrong with that approach?
Yeah, I completely agree to that. And so on the platforms, are there any particular influencers or different brands that you follow yourself for inspiration, or is it just being yourself and sharing whatever works for you?
For me, I'm not trying to copy or follow anybody else. This kind of just happened in a slightly organic way, so I'm just doing my own thing. There are people I admire, but that's for very different reasons. So, you know, I've got colleagues that I admire, both within my organization and fellow chief executives that I know that I think are getting this really right. And then I've got, speakers or people who are influencers like in the business community, like Simon Sinek or whoever it may be, that I would follow because I want to learn from what they're saying. So I see social media as an opportunity for me to learn. And I think that's incredibly important from my perspective. So I tend to follow people who I can learn from, whether it's content or technical stuff, or will give me really provoke my thinking as well. But in terms of, if I try to pick up a common theme, and I was thinking about this, it's the people who are being authentic, the people who can vary that style between humor and the serious stuff. I love the fact you're bringing humor to water utilities, sewage utilities. Why not? Why not? We're all human beings, aren't we? And we're spending so much time at work. Let's try and make it enjoyable at the same time. And let's try and share a bit of humor and not take ourselves too seriously. So the people that I think are doing it really well can vary that style, can bring the humor, the authenticity in, are willing to be brave and stick their neck out. I've had people ask me, you sometimes comment on politics or well, again, why not? Why not? I think this idea, if I was a chief executive of a listed company, it might be different. Clearly, you could say one bad thing and the share price plummets the next day. But if I think something's wrong or right, as long as you're constructive and respectful about it, again, it's fine to have an opinion. And I think people really respect the fact that you do have an opinion and they can tell that you're being honest. I think that honesty. So I tend to follow and admire the people that are also being honest. Tom Haig is brilliant on Twitter. He talks about mental health. He talks about some of the problems he's been through and things like that. And I love that honesty and openness.
So John, does it also account for you?
Yeah, I think to Sarah's point, it's hard to name one or two accounts because we've seen the platforms change and the way people are using Twitter now. You do get to know the ones that stand out pretty quickly, and the ones I do follow a lot of utilities, and the content that we retweet are people who make me pause and certainly are relevant to our work. And so I do nod to a lot of utilities. The first one that I think really started to set the stage for us and give us some freedom to try some things differently was DC Water. And they're a utility who serves a large audience. And in terms of how they were using that Twitter platform years ago, it gave us some ideas to say, why don't we try something that's a bit different than just sharing our press releases or just telling people what our treatment plant permit limits are. I mean, that's all relevant information, and we can share pictures of our trustees being sworn in. That's all relevant. I mean, it matters, but it's not what people relate to. They relate to the jokes that they share on their own accounts. They relate to the emotional side of things. The fact that the pandemic has really been difficult for all of us in different ways. And the fact that we have 800 employees, half of which don't have telework options. They have to be at the treatment plant, at our lab facilities, doing the work in the field that will make sure that the water that we're telling everybody to use every day to wash their hands is going to get treated safely and return to the environment safely. That work matters. And our team who's here doing that work deserves to be acknowledged for that. So I love to tell their stories. And the utilities who tell those emotional stories and say, we're proud to be serving you, those are stories worth telling. Those are accounts worth following. And the way that they can do that with either emotional value or entertainment value, it goes a long way. And I have a lot of respect for a number of accounts who do that across the country.
So John, I have a couple of questions coming in for you and also to our friends listening at this moment. If you have any questions, feel free to ask me via the chat function. But the first person that wants to ask you a question is Damien. Damien was our speaker in one of the previous sessions. So Damien, if you could turn on your mic and your camera. Oh, there he is.
Here I am.
Good to see you, Damien.
Hi.
Happy you're here.
Hello.
An old friend of Sarah Walker.
Yes. And I've got COVID hair, as you can see. So this is 4 months growth. So I'm just letting it do its thing now. So yeah, I mean, my question is kind of related to what I do anyway. It's about the role of CEOs and senior executives engaging on social media. And obviously, this is something that Sarah's been doing really well. She's a great example of that. And I'd love to kind of hear the speaker's views on this kind of more widely, and you as well, John, from a kind of utility point of view, whether you could see value in for example, the CEO of the utility or people in leadership positions actually doing what Sarah's doing and going out as individuals on behalf of the organization and being adding to the communications in their own way. It might, perhaps it's not appropriate for that industry. I don't know, but I'd love to hear your thoughts on that.
My thoughts certainly are, I think CEOs, for example, in utilities would certainly have a place, and a number of them do have a place speaking on behalf of their organization and interacting with their official company accounts, with customers. There can be a place for that. We've had that conversation here amongst our leadership circle, wondering if that would be something in the future. It's not always critical, but I think it's important, as we talked earlier about the time commitment. I think it's important to recognize that with that comes risks, and with that comes a time commitment that might not have that immediate payback. And so it's important to recognize you got to weigh all those options. So it certainly can have a place. It can echo a message or reinforce a message that's coming out from an official company account. It's not essential for it to be successful for a utility to be able to connect with its customers. It's another level of personality, another level of humanness that does go a long way. But it's not essential at this point. At least it's not for our organization. Our CEO, Kyle Dreyfus-Wells, is a tremendous public voice. She has a great personality when she's giving presentations, and we like to echo her sentiments when we do share content on Twitter when she's out in public. But does she need a social media Twitter account to do that? Not necessarily, but certainly if we were to have that conversation further, there would be reasons to consider that, and definitely part of the conversation.
That's interesting. And I suppose, passing that question over to you, Sarah. I mean, you're someone who's doing it now. Obviously, a very different industry, a very different sector. But from your point of view, do you see, is it giving a competitive advantage to your organization in what you do? Because you've said obviously it's part of the strategy. It's part of the overall strategy to kind of perhaps humanize the brand or that sort of thing. And I mean, could you see yourself going back to not using it anymore, or is it now that the kind of the genie's out the bottle? Is it you couldn't imagine not doing it now?
So I think what this really goes back to is why are you doing it? And as long as the why remains the same, then I can't see why I would change. So I've alluded to this earlier. We're a people business and we need a human face. And I'm trying to lead the way for all of my people to do this. I don't just want it to be me. I want us all to be doing it if we're comfortable with it. And I really respect individual strengths, individual preferences, individual levels of extroversion, introversion, privacy, all of those things. So I would never try and make somebody do this who is horribly uncomfortable. But if they do fancy doing it, I think it's my job to lead the way and to show them that it's okay. So that's the first thing. So I feel I'm kind of enabling all of my people to
leading by example in a way.
Trying to, yeah, absolutely. But also I'm on a bit of a mission to try and change the sector and to see and to get business differently. So the thing that Farah tried to show earlier was an open letter that I'd written to business leaders to say in the aftermath, well, I say aftermath of the crisis, we're still in the crisis and the crisis will be here for many years. This is the new, what I call the new abnormal. We have to step up. And I described it for me as going from being what I called a responsible bus driver to a human flag bearer. So for me now, I just think it's a core part of the job. So I can't really envisage a time when I would go backwards, because I just see myself at the apex of the organization trying to lead the way and open things up for everybody else. And I'm not just talking about opening up the way for them to talk on social media. I'm talking about how we connect with our communities, with society, the role that business plays and all of those things. So I think it does give us a competitive advantage in two ways. The first one is like-minded clients, they know more about who we are and they trust us more and they start to want to work with us more. And of course, I'm not just about clients, I'm about our people, the people that work with us, the people that want to work with us. Now we're growing rapidly, we're open for recruitment, so what I'm doing is trying to show people what it would be like to work here as well. So, on both fronts, having that transparency and opening up the brand, I do think can give us competitive advantage for people who share our values, whether that be clients or whether that be potential employees.
Great, thanks guys for your really interesting answers.
Thanks, Dave.
Yes, and about those values, Sarah, I think it's really good that you bring that up, because I received another question for you. It's from Roy Morris. Roy writes, I have a question for Sarah. As a female leader in a senior leadership position, how far can your social media presence go in inspiring younger girls and future generations to follow in your footsteps? And I think it's a really interesting question, because what I see specifically on Instagram and people my age is that they engage on social media really different. So what are your ideas on that?
So Roy, thank you for that question. I feel a huge weight of responsibility. The fact that I'm the only woman and the first woman doing the job that I do, it's my mission to make sure I'm not the last. And I'm not just talking about tokenism and another couple of other women doing the things that I do. Why not? We've got 51% of the population. So, you know, I'd settle for 50%. We're not going for dominance here. 50-50 is fine. So I do feel a huge responsibility to show other people it can be done. And I also think I have to hold myself to account. And by putting myself out there, I am holding myself to account to try and make sure this can happen. So, but people ask me if I'm a feminist. I don't really know, to be honest. That word doesn't mean anything to me. I call myself a peopleist. So I believe in people and I believe in individuality. So I would like to be a role model and show anybody that they can lead or that they could come. I come from a social mobility background as well. I in theory, on paper, I should not be doing what I'm doing. So if I can say to anybody else, you can do whatever you want to do, whether that be male, female, whatever age, you know, I think it's really important to do that. So thank you, Roy. I do think it's really, really important. And social media is such a gift when it comes to being able to do that.
Absolutely. Well, I think as we are almost ending this session, I have one more closing questions for the both of you, because we've heard your words of wisdom and that was great to hear. But if you sum everything up, so how do you, Sarah, make your audience stop scrolling?
Be yourself. Be yourself, be brave. That's how I would sum it up.
And John?
Yeah, I think the two words that come to mind are humor and humility. I think if you can balance those, that's what it means to be human, to be able to see to see humor in things, and to recognize that there's other people who know a heck of a lot more than you, and recognize that there's a lot of people doing a heck of a lot more than you. So I think humor and humility go a long way when it comes to making that connection, having people kind of stop on the content you post.
So that's a great closing remark. I think we now can move forward with the Q&A because we see a lot of questions coming up. Tom, I heard you, or at least you texted me, you had another question. So Tom, if I can give you the word back.
Yeah, hey Farah. Yeah, I did. I guess the thing I thought about Sarah is you said you need to get the authentic voice, which I think is fabulous. The same with you, John, is like create the voice, especially with the humor. And Sarah, you said you didn't come up with it to sell, right? It's not a sales tool. It's designed to kind of show leadership and show your tone of voice. But arguably, have you had kind of new clients or at least conversations from people who have said, hey, we saw your vlog and we saw you sing, or even though you didn't directly position this as a sales tool, indirectly as a lesson to other leaders, it can open conversations and ultimately drive new business, right?
Yeah, it's not just driving new business, it's driving new employees, as I talked about before. You know, potential new partners wanting to join the business and all the rest of it. So even though I've always had a phrase in my head, which was a bit ironic because going back a while, I used to work for Boots the Chemist, which is a large retailer here I say in the UK, I know it's a global brand. And so I learned from some brilliant people while I was there about marketing, about BD and various other things, even though I'm actually an accountant by background, but I spent a lot of time in marketing and BD and I learned an awful lot from them. And my first job in a law firm 15 years ago was as a marketing director. And I remember all the lawyers saying to me, you know, we hate selling. I said, great, because we're not going to sell. The best way to sell is not to sell. Just stop trying to sell. And actually it comes from that. So because I'm not trying to do that genuinely, it has more success than if I was. You can tell, you know, the sort of engagements I get on a post that so if I put a post into LinkedIn, so what I've discovered, for example, putting your own photograph or your own PDF rather than issuing somebody else's or retweeting or resharing somebody else's, that will send the algorithms up in LinkedIn. I've worked this out for myself, by the way. I've probably got some of it wrong, but I can tell you the results I get. So if I put my own photograph or my own post that's not a reshare of somebody else's with a PDF or a photograph in it that's unique in some way or that I've created, and it's normally about leadership or it's about me or it's about something very personal, I'm normally at about 10,000 views within a week. And the engagement, there's normally a couple of hundred likes or comments or stuff like that. But the 10,000 views, if I just retweet somebody else's, like somebody in my business has done a great deal, and I go, great, the team have done a great deal, that's maybe going to get a few hundred. So if you're trying to get to a bigger audience, try less hard almost. You know, if it looks overtly like you're talking about your business or trying to sell, it gets far less engagement than if you're doing something quite personal and unique and, you know, not just regurgitating somebody else's content. I don't know if you find the same thing, John, but it's the figures are startlingly different. It
is because people do start to trust you, and so when they see your face attached to the content you're sharing, that they know that it's something that they can stop and pay attention to. The word marketing has come up quite a bit today, and I think it's important that the way that we see the work that we do, we don't see it as marketing because we're not selling it. We're not selling our service. We're a utility. We provide a service, and our benefit is a healthier environment. So that's not something that should need to be sold, but it's something that we provide as a service to our customers. And so our social media and all of our outreach is really intended to help to educate and make the connection with the customers that are benefiting from the work that we do. So that is a story that we can tell. So we're not selling it, but we are certainly making it available and helping people connect with it in a way that's relevant to them.
Fantastic. Well, Farah, that's kind of my final question, but just want to say a big thanks to Sarah and John. It's been really interesting 45 minutes, and continue the great work across social.
Thank you, Tom.
Absolutely. So it was great, John and Sarah, inviting you to this session, and we've been getting a lot of good vibes from everybody and good questions and a great discussion. So thank you for being on board for this, and keep up the good work on social media. And I think both of you are an inspiration for a lot of companies. So thank you for that.
Pleasure.
I'm happy to be here with Sarah. Yeah, thank you very much.
Great to meet you.
You too.
Well, have a great day, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.